Okay. Chavtes Amud Beis, and it's on the bottom. So it just seems to be insert, like the Mishnah is not. That's not the main point of the Mishnah, as we'll see soon. The reason the Kohen Gadol had to be told in the beginning of the day, the Mishnah soon is going to say that everybody starts the day. They're supposed to be told, regardless if they're Torah or not. But the Mishnah does say that I had the problem when we learned it. I said I voiced the problem, but I think today the answer will come up. But anyway, the Mishnah said that anybody, even in the middle of the day, after he was told in the morning, if he defecated, he'd have to go to the mikvah again. And if he urinated, then he would have to Kiddush Adayim V'Raglayim. That was the Mishnah on the Chavches, the beginning of the parak. It said, Zak Lalai B'Mikdash, whoever Mesach Esragla, which means that he defecated, so then he has to immerse himself again. And if he just urinated, then it's enough to have Kiddush Adayim V'Raglayim. So we're on Chavches and days. 3 lines from the bottom. If anybody has a screen, so it's on the screen. Zak Lalai B'Mikdash, Bishlam V'Raglayim Mishum Nitzotzos. Eliyadayim my timer. So very interesting. The Gemara says that this Kiddush Adayim V'Raglayim has to do with the physical filth that got on him, that when he urinated, so it's very possible that some droplets of urine came on his feet, and that's the reason why he'd have to wash his feet. It's very interesting that the Kiddush Adayim V'Raglayim is a way of consecrating his hands. Kiddush Adayim V'Raglayim, he has to use the kior, he has to use a holy vessel, but it's based on the filth that came on him. And the Gemara is asking a very interesting question, that here it is only a chash that his feet are dirty, not his hands. So the Gemara even suggested that he should only wash his feet and not his hands. What happens when a person's urinates? So it could be as the urine slows up, so it goes closer. First it's flowing far away, and then it gets closer as he's finishing. It's emptying out, and then the droplets might splash onto his feet. So that the Gemara understands he should have to wash his feet, Kiddush Raglayim, but there's no reason why his hands should get dirty. So the Gemara is suggesting that he should only have to do Kiddush Raglayim without Kiddush Adayim, which is a fascinating idea. I would have thought it doesn't exist. There's only Kiddush Adayim, but the Gemara does get listed as a possibility.
It's not necessary, then why do it?
Right, and it will be possible to do just Kiddush Raglayim and not Kiddush Adayim. Bishlam Raglayim Mishum Nitzotzos. Nitzotzos means droplets. It means droplets of urine. Elo Yadayim, my time. Why should he have to wash his hands? Rabbi Abba Zosomeres. From here we can learn out. Top of the Flamid, mitzvah l'shavshev. It's a mitzvah to clean. It means he's supposed to clean off his feet. If every person, not only the Kohen, anybody that gets if he urinates. And nowadays it doesn't happen because there are urinals and toilets and people don't get there. It could be that people do, but the halacha usually would not apply because the fact doesn't usually happen that his feet get dirty. But if it would, so then he's supposed to rub off the urine. He's not supposed to let droplets of urine remain on his feet. And therefore, he's supposed to clean it off. If he has something to clean it off with, then he won't get his hands dirty. But if he doesn't, he's supposed to rub with his hands, rub his feet, rub the urine off his feet with his hands. And therefore, there's possibility that his hands are also going to get dirty. So therefore, he has to do Kiddush Adayim V'Raglayim. He has to wash his hands because it also might have touched the urine. How did it touch urine? Because it touched the urine that dropped onto his feet. Besides, a person's usher that he should go with the droplets of urine on his feet. It looks like he's a kushaf. Kushaf means he has a damaged organ.
We're talking about that they wore sandals. So they would go on the feet.
So the Kohen didn't have sandals. The Kohen basically can't wear shoes. They only have they went barefoot.
Okay.
It is true. It is true if a person's wearing sandals or shoes. So then if the urine went onto the shoes, he should also wash off the shoes. It shouldn't look like he urinated in a way that it didn't. It wasn't healthy. He's not healthy. If he's healthy, so then the urine flows further. If he's not healthy, kushaf means someone who doesn't have an organ in a way that it would shoot the water, the urine far away. So it's of course it's a far shashta, but you see people, they talk. People like to talk. So if they see somebody who has urine on his legs, so they might say, "Oh, why is that? He's not so healthy. If he's not so healthy, it means he doesn't have a regular organ. So then he wouldn't be able. They're not serving. They talk about. So how does he have children? No, it doesn't have. Yes, it's not his children. So how his wife get pregnant? Oh, he's the mamzer. So even though this is like really wild, but it seems that we're supposed to be very careful that there shouldn't be any farshash about any impurity in the lineage. So Mozi Laz Albano, I'm saying that's going to cause people to have a rumor, not all people, but there are some people that start talking. So you see how far you're supposed to be choshish and chash from zeros. So this is the halacha. If a person does get, I would just suggest that the halacha should come out that even if water got onto his shoes, you don't see the difference if it's water or urine. So a person should have to make sure if for any reason urine or water got onto his feet, he's supposed to wipe it off, even though it's a far chash. But Chazal wanted us to be careful that the lineage should all have purity. No one should have any rumor to talk about. So that's the end of the Gemara. And how did it say that the Kohen any Kohen who urinated during the day would have to do Kiddush Shadayim B'Raglayim. The reason is to get off the urine off of his leg, off his feet, and off of his hands. How did it get on his feet? Because it happens when a person's urinating, so when he's slowing down, when it's finishing off, so then it does come close to him. And really, the whole shots, the whole lot, the rumor is ridiculous because every person, even a healthy person, once it's dripping at the end of he finished urinating. So, but they have something to talk about. So they'll say, oh, so that's the evil of lashon hara and kinds of rumors like that. So because of that, every person is supposed to make sure that if he does get urine on his feet, he's supposed to rub it with his hands. So this Kohen who urinated might have urine on his feet and on his hands. He's supposed to Kiddush Shadayim B'Raglayim.
He didn't invent toilet paper in those days. It would have been different.
Okay, it could be that also people who have available paper or something like that, so then they wouldn't use their hands. But if they didn't, then your person's supposed to use his hands also and then wash his hands.
I
Okay,
have a little
that's the
question
end of
on
the
that.
Gemara.
Why is that, also sometimes the hands get a little bit wet from,
And that the Gemara didn't see it. The Gemara didn't
Didn't
see
see
it.
that?
Okay, the Gemara didn't see that it should happen. Okay,
Maybe I
fine.
don't-
That's the end of the first sugya. The next sugya is mamish goes to Maseches Brachas. Means really we could take change channels over here to go to Maseches Brachas. It has nothing to do with the sugya anymore. L'chora. There is a. It talks about so. It talks about now if there's some of the excrement that after a person defecated, then there's some excrement that didn't get cleaned out. So is he allowed to daven or not? That's going to be that has to be clean. Even in the place of the anus, he has to be clean. That's going to be the next sugya. Nothing to do with us again. There are some that say there's over here on the Gemara here. There's a Betzalel, Rennesberg on the side. There's a Gersa over here that brings down that maybe it has something to do with din that if a person defecated, the Kohen defecated says he has to do tefillah. That it could be the reason is because in order to clean off, even though the mikvah is not a bathtub, the mikvah, and surely if other people are using it also, a person should take a shower before he goes to the mikvah. But here it seems to say there's something with the reason why since he defecated, he has to go to the mikvah. So the Gemara brings in the sugya of tzoa, of excrement, as far as the hygiene, that he should be clean in order to daven. That's how the Gemara is going to come in now. And it could be has something to do with the reason why he's supposed to go to the mikvah after he defecated. But as far as the Mishnah, we're more or less finished. It talks about a Kohen. If he defecated, he has to go to the mikvah. And if he urinated, he has to do Kiddush Shadayim B'Raglayim. So we start on the sugya now on the fourth line, Amra Papa. So really, we're out of the base of Mikdash now. We're talking about Hilchos Brachos. The din is that if a person has excrement, bimkoma means in its place. In its place means in the area of the anus. So then he's not allowed to say Kriya Shema. Now he's wearing clothing. This person's wearing clothing. He's dressed. It's covered up. But still, it's not enough, even though it's covered up. But since there's, so over there, the Gemara is going to talk about how surface it is. Is it how, of course, if every person has a lot of filth inside his body, that's no problem. He can say Kriya Shema. There's an issue about if he needs a urge to relieve himself, so then there's halacha. But the fact that it's inside his body doesn't mean he can't say Kriya Shema. So that's going to be, but if it's outside his body, it came out, he excreted, and now it's dirty on the surface in the area. So is he allowed to say Kriya Shema or not? Even though it's covered with clothing, even though it's covered, he's dressed. But the fact that it's not internal, it's already external, maybe he's not allowed to say Kriya Shema. The Gemara is going to bring the sugya soon. That's in a couple of lines. We're going to see a general machlokas about if a person has dirt, filth, excrement, let's say, on his arm and it's covered with a shirt, is he allowed to say Kriya Shema? You might say that it's covered up. If there's so in the room and next to it it's covered up, that's okay. If it's on the table, on the floor, and it's covered up, you're allowed to say Kriya Shema and it's Daled Amos, as long as it's covered up. But there is an issue that the Gemara says soon about if it's on the skin, even though it's covered up, he has that so on his arm, on his body, and it's covered up, that's not a problem. But, or it might not be a problem, we'll see in Machlokas soon. But everybody holds that if it's in that area where it's more disgusting, as the Gemara is going to say soon, so then he would not be allowed to say Kriya Shema. So that's like Gemara. It's not something so in its place. It means in its natural place. When it comes out by the anus area, so it's also to say Kriya Shema, even though he's wearing clothing. Hey Chidami, the Gemara doesn't know what the case is. What's the case that you're talking about? Either nearest, pshita, either low nearest, low nitatalam. So nearest, the word nearest means if it's visible. Visible doesn't mean visible to anybody because he's dressed. So that doesn't mean nearest. But it means if it means is it only covered by clothing, but otherwise besides the clothing would have been surface, would have been external. So then it goes without saying. It means the Gemara says it's pashut that it's also to say Kriya Shema if there's excrement that is not internal.
Right.
If it's external, even though it's covered by the clothing, you surely not allowed to say Kriya Shema. Either low nearest, if it's not visible, means even if he wouldn't be wearing clothing, it's internal. It's deep in a way that it's not visible from the flesh alone, besides the clothing, it wouldn't be visible. So then that's considered internal. The Torah is not for angels, it's for human beings. Human beings have excrement, and that's okay. That's not considered that it's visible. It's no problem. So what is the case that you say not allowed to be Kriyashma? Either goes without saying, or it's not true. So then my answer is it's in a position, it's in a place that if he be in a sitting position, so then it would be visible. Not that anybody sees. The point is that the body alone does not cover itself up. When he sits, so then the legs spread out and the buttocks spread out, and then it would be visible. If he's standing position, then it's not visible. So the chiddush is, even when he's standing, and right now it's not visible, but since it's not inherently covered up, it's not internal, that's enough to be considered external, and he wouldn't be allowed to say Kriya Shema even in a standing position. This whole Gemara takes for granted. I'm going to say a simple pshat in the Gemara. Rashi says it a little different, but just to say, go to the Gemara a simple way. The Rif, the Rambam, they learned the Gemara a bit simpler than Rashi, and the Gemara is asking that till now, it seems partial to the Gemara, like the Gemara said, the nearest pshita, even though it's covered up by his clothing. But if it's external, it's not internal, it's external. Even though it's covered up with clothing, it's still partial that it's usher to say Kriya Shema. And the Gemara says, why is that so simple? The Itmar, so al b'soro, o shoy yodav beis akisei, kafun amamuta likish Kriya Shema. The Christam was likish Kriya Shema. That if he'd have, like this is what I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that if he'd have excrement on his flesh, on his hand, on his leg, he'd have soa, but it's covered up. It's all basoro, but it's covered up. Or if you he stuck his hand into the Beis HaKisei, but there's a machitza over there, just his hand is in the Beis HaKisei. Beis HaKisei is a place where you're not allowed to say Kriya Shema, but only his hand is there. If one says you can say Kriya Shema, over there the Gemara says that it has to do with his mouth, that Yamali Piti was
his hands inside.
His hands inside.
But his mouth's
outside.
Right.
And if Krista says no, if Krista says Mach Raslik is Kriya Shema, Rashi brings down the pasuk is Kolas Mosai Tamarna Hashem Yichamoch. All my body says. So, so then even his hand should not be in a place which is there. So if Krista would hold that if he'd have, let's say, Toa on his arm and he has a shirt sleeve, it's covered. But since it's on his body, if Krista says you can't say Kriya Shema, that whole Gemara would have made sense. That also in the Bimkoma, by the Piyat Abbas, by the Einus also, that even though it's covered by clothing, but it's us to say Kriya Shema because it's external from his body. But Rav Huna doesn't make sense. Rashi says the kasha on everybody, but let's go to the Gemara easily. The question of being Rav Huna, that Rav Huna doesn't fit with the Gemara before, because Rav Huna says that if he's covered with clothing, if he has excrement on his arm and it's covered, it's okay. You can say Kriya Shema. The smell doesn't go through, it doesn't penetrate. It doesn't smell anything bad. But on his arm is that a problem? Rav Huna says no, it's covered up. It's covered up from his mouth. It means so why was it pshita? Why did the Gemara say without that for sure, either nearest pshita, that of course it's usher if it's external on his body, even though it's covered up. He's wearing pants, he's wearing clothing.
Against
so,
Rav Huna.
So it's against Rav Huna. So the simple kasha would be against Rav Huna. And the Gemara answers, in this place means like we started off, so in the area of the anus over there, so then it's considered more disgusting. Rashi says that it just came out and it's more intense, and their odor is more intense, even though he doesn't smell it, but it's more disgusting. And therefore, even Rav Huna would agree that over there it's also if it's external, even though it's covered by clothing. And that's the reason why Rav Huna would hold that as mutter. So we just finished the Gemara.
Napish. I'm sorry, Napish Zohama is.
Napish means a lot. Napish means a lot. Aramaic. And Zohama means filth. The disgust is much. It's very disgusting when it's in this place. And Shalom Kom, a different part of his body, it's not so disgusting. That's the
Rav Chisda is matir.
Rav Chisda Oser. Rav Chisda Oser, Rav Huna says mutter. And we're saying now, even if Huna's mutter, even if Huna holds mutter, but that's only the rest of the body. But if it would be in the area of the Piyat Abbas, right, the arm. So
I'm surprised because the arm isn't closer to the face.
No, but that's what he's saying, that it's not so disgusting. So over there, if he covers it, it's okay. In all these cases, he doesn't smell it. It's not penetrating the shirt. Okay, so that we finished the sugya. Just to sum it up, there's a machlokes and all the body, let's say on his arm, if he has soa and it's covered up, or he puts his hand into the Beis HaKisei in a way that his hand is in the Beis HaKisei, but he's not. Is that a problem or not? Rav Chisda says, no, it is a problem. You're not allowed to say Kriya Shema. Rav Huna says, you are allowed to say Kriya Shema. Machlokes is supposed to be paskin like. It means even down to the halacha, it comes out of machlokes, but it's a machlokes who paskin like. So we're machmir, try to be machmir that the person should clean his body, even if it's covered up. But Agumar is saying that everybody, even Rav Huna, is going to agree that if it's in the Piyat Abbas, if it's in the area that came out by the anus, so then everybody holds that it's also if it's external. And what's called external, the Gemara says it's called external, even if he right now is in a standing position and is covered up by the body. But if it would be in a sitting position, it would be external. That's called external, and he's not allowed to say Kriya Shema. So that's why the post can point out that a person should be careful, that make sure that he cleans himself in a way that even when he's in a sitting position, there should be nothing, no stain left of excrement, and or else he wouldn't be allowed to say Kriya Shema. A person who's not careful with this, so then he could be saying brachas the whole day and learning Torah the whole day, and really it's also for him to be learning. So people are Kadosh you're talking about. Yeah,
I think that's where they say you have to
that's talking about
throw away,
Evan.
to cover your excrement out.
Yeah. Yes, please.
I have to say that in my clinical practice, I can tell you from years of experience that the opposite is also true. There are a number of from people that have a certain psychosis called nerven in Yiddish, which means that they over worry like this.
Okay.
And they're
Obsession is obsession. So
they root
no
their
reason
whole
to be
village.
obsessed. Right. Yeah, okay, all kinds of obsession. So that's like you say, that's
Out of proportion.
out of proportion. That's not. But we're talking about the halacha. The halacha person should be sure
Yes,
that he's clean,
okay.
even in a way
Causes
that is not a big deal. Especially with a little bit of water or something like that. So then there's no chash, and nobody should be obsessed. Yeah, there are people that have all kinds of obsessions, and it's true that when it comes into anything about a mitzvah, so then there's more room to be obsessed because you have a person who wants to be obsessed. So he becomes a film obsession. So it happens a lot of times that they use it as an excuse, but not that the Torah is a reason to be obsessed. It's not. It's on the contrary. It should make a person do a shalom. So no reason to take it to an extreme. But to know the halacha that even if it's covered, when people don't, it might not be marked with so much. Like it sees them and it's say there, like what's going to happen. But the halacha is he's not supposed to say divrei Torah if there's a stain of excrement that would be visible if he'd be in a sitting position. Okay, next Gemara. Tana Rabbanan. Also, not talking about the base of Mikdash now, but it talks about derech eretz besuda, that a person is supposed to be hygienic and clean, and also we wash for bread.
Okay, just to mention the halacha that when you go to the bathroom for the gedolim, you're supposed to wash hands again if you're in the middle of the suda.
That's coming up right here. Tana Rabbanan. Halacha the suda adam yotzer lashin mayim lo tiyado achas v'nichnas. If a person during the suda he urinated during the suda, and the issue was that his hand got dirty from the urine. Here, the Gemara says he only has to wash one hand. Why one hand? Because the assumption is why did he get his hand dirty from urine? Like the Gemara said on top of the page, because he cleaned his foot from the urine that came onto his foot. So only the hand that he got dirty. If he got both hands dirty, you have to wash both hands. But if he only used one hand, then he only has to wash one hand. The nichnas, he goes back into the suda. The Ramah, if he didn't get any hands dirty, then he doesn't have to wash. Washing the hands after urinating is only because he got it dirty. It's not a spiritual thing. It's that if a person would have urinated and he didn't get his hands dirty at all, he wouldn't have to wash.
Whose opinion?
What?
Whose opinion is it?
It says Tana Rabbanan.
Honorable.
It says if a person was during the suda and he went out to urinate, he washes one hand. Which hand? The hand that he got dirty because he wiped the urine. So then he comes in, back in, come into the suda. It doesn't say in extreme case that he defecated, then surely he got himself dirty. Even if he does, he went to speak with somebody and it took a long time. Rashi says an hour or two. I don't think Rashi means dafka, but it means that he was talking to somebody in a way that he forgot that he's in the middle of a suda. It's called chadas. Then we don't know what he touched during the time. He forgot to he doesn't wash his hands anymore. He's not conscious of his hands to be clean. Then no to stay other than then he has to wash both hands because since he was Mesiach Das, you have to wash your hands again. Surely, if he would have defecated, he got his hands dirty, then surely he has to wash his hands. But this is a case of not Yada because he wasn't conscious of guarding his hands to be clean. He shouldn't wash his hands in a place where people don't see. The people that are guests, he's sitting by a suda with other people. So don't wash outside because then people might suspect that maybe he didn't wash and he's coming in with his filthy hands. And probably it's also like a chshad of the hygiene that he's coming in with his disgusting hands and he's passing the food around, things like that. I don't think it's only a chshad that he didn't do the halacha correctly. I think it's a chshad that he's not being hygienic and he's coming in with his dirty hands. So he should do it. He should wash in front of all of them. He should make sure everybody sees, make a point, everybody should see that he washes. Ellen, this is like a cultural thing. Ellen nichnas v'yoshev b'mkomo v'notel. Now here it says shtei yadav. Here it says that he comes in, sits in his place, and he washes both hands. If it says washes both hands, that means it's even going on the case where he's Yosef Hifli. Some take out the gears of Shtei Yadav. It says in the Kisuf, in the old Kisvei Yad, they don't have the word Shtei Yadav. It's only going in the case of the one hand. He only went out to urinate. But whatever the case would be, it says that he should wash in front of everybody. So then it's going to be obvious that he washed. People shouldn't suspect that he didn't wash. The tafiach is the washing cup. Nowadays we call it like a natla or washing cup. So he asked if anybody else needs the cup. It's very different than nowadays. Nowadays we don't wash by the table. We have a sink. Nobody washes by the table. But in those days, it wasn't such a strange thing that people would wash by the table. And the mashamish, the waiter would bring the cup up to us to wash. So it just makes it very conspicuous. Makes it everyone should know that I'm washing. Don't think that I went out and got my hands dirty. I'm coming back and sitting with my dirty hands. So it does in front of everybody. And also he asked, does anybody else need the cup? Okay, that's the derech eretz. This is like, just to point out, this is Shulchan Aruch, Simon Kuf Ayin over there. It's called Divrei. The title of the parak is Divrei Musa Sheinag Bem Adam Basuda. These are ethics, Hilchos ethics during the meal. It's the derech eretz. It's not after Allah. It's more like derech eretz. This is only talking about when he's only coming back to drink. So then he doesn't plan to eat anymore. He's middle of a suda. He finished eating. He's just going to drink. So then there are people that they would urinate and they would not wash their hands again. Like he figures, what's the problem? I'm not going to touch any food. But he might touch food. So we want him to wash his hands. And there you have a suspicion. People might suspect him that he didn't wash. So do it in front of
You
everybody.
go to restaurants, they have a sign that says everybody should wash their hands after going to the bathroom.
Right.
So
Okay, and here's talking about urinating, and he doesn't really get his hands dirty, and he's only going to drink now, he's not going to eat. So that's what it talks about over here. So if Chista says, and this is the case, that people might suspect that he didn't wash, and therefore wash in front of everybody. But if he's coming to eat back, then everyone knows, everyone's going to wash. There's nobody that's so filthy that he's gonna be eating, even if he just urinated. If he's going to touch the bread, then no chash, he's going to do it without washing. So therefore, he can do it. No tell then he can wash outside if nobody saw him, because nobody's going to suspect him. They made the idea that everybody knows that he's going to be finicky. That everybody's finicky not to eat with his hands after he urinated. So therefore, there's no chash. No chash is only when he's going to just drink. And during when he does drink, it could be that he's going to then start eating and he won't realize it. Then you have to take the precaution to show the derech eretz that, and he should wash in front of everybody. I happen to be very finicky, and everybody knows that I wouldn't even drink without washing first, because I might touch the bread by mistake. So therefore, there's no chash. So it's not halacha. It's more like the culture and the derech eretz, and in the place where there's a chash that people would want him to wash, but they're not sure that he washed, then he should wash in front of everybody. But if there's no chash, nowadays probably there's no chash, everybody comes out, everybody washes. So there's probably the halacha. This halacha doesn't apply nowadays, because it's just, like it says, it depends on the culture. If everybody knows that he washed, then there's no chash. But if there's a place where there's a chash, he didn't wash, so to make everybody feel comfortable, he should wash in front of everybody. Okay, so that was what he calls it Hilchas Suda here, but it's Hilchas Musa Basuda. And what came out that if he only was urinated, then he got one hand dirty, then he only has to wash one hand, and two hands if he was Mesiach Das, surely if he defecated, he got his hands dirty. And in a way, if it's in a situation where people might be choshish that he's not going to wash, like it says, he's only going to drink, and he's not an istinus, then he should wash in front of everybody. If not, if it's for food or people know that he's an istinus, so then it's not necessary to wash in front of everybody. You can even wash outside where nobody saw that he washed. Nobody's going to think differently.
was it Katanim? He did just
Right. That's what we spoke about. Mishnah. So back into the issue about the Kohen coming into the Beis HaMikdash, and the Mishnah before told us that the Kohen Gadol, he starts the day of the Avodah of Yom Kippur, he's supposed to go to the mikveh, and the Mishnah inserted over there that anybody, even in the middle of the day, if he would have urinated, he has to do Kiddush Lamb. If he defecated, he has to immerse himself. And now the Mishnah continues, nobody can start doing Avodah in the day. He can't even come to the Azara. Rashi says even without Avodah. Rashi says even though it says Lavoda, it's Lav Dafka. Just coming into the courtyard, he can't come in, even if he's Tohar. He says, I'm Tohar. I went to the mikveh a week ago and I haven't been tummy since. So no, he has to go to the mikveh right before he comes into the Azara. So I just would like to say that the printer is the one who divided the Mishnayos into sections and put the Gemara in between. The original editions didn't have that. And I think that the printer here might have misled us. I think that this Mishnah should be connected to the Mishnah before. And the reason why Kohen Gadol has to go to the mikveh in the beginning of the Avodah is not because of what I said before, 2 pages ago because Mesach Raglav. It's because of this Mishnah. Because they end up in Nichlas Lazar, Afilu Torah, Jitbo. Read the Mishnah altogether. Don't make 2 pages of Gemara in between. So I think that will be a very simple pshat in the Mishnah. We had difficulty when we learned the Mishnah. What does it say about Eilat Nichlas? So just read the Mishnah on. The print is the one who divided the Mishnahs. So I think that it's very Miyushav now that that's what the Mishnah really meant to say. And that's told us by the way, it told us the whole cloud that the person who urinates in between, the person who defecates, but when he starts the day, surely he has to immerse himself. The Mishnah continues, Chamish Tfilas V'asar Kedushin Tovu Kohen Gadol Makadosh Baruch Hu. Yom, on the day of Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol is going to immerse himself 5 times and do Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim 10 times. And that's going to be between changing of the clothing. As we're going to see that sometimes the Kohen Gadol is wearing the regular set of the 8 begadim, called the Big Day Zahav. The golden clothing means it has some gold in it. And then when he does the Vodah of Yom Kippur, then he'll be doing the Big Day Lavan, the white clothing, which means only 4 out of the 8, and they're all white. And whenever he changes clothing, it's going to be a gold, white, gold, white, gold. So there are 5 times, 5 begadim, 4. And before he starts, that's also before he puts on each set of clothing, there's always going to be a Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim and a Tefillah. So the Mishnah is going to tell us later on how it works out. Altogether, there are going to be 5 immersions and 10 Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. All of the immersions are all going to be in the area of the Kodesh, means in the courtyard, on the Beis HaParva. So on the 19, on the few tests over there, described how the Beis HaMikdash looked. And over there it said that, maybe I have just put it on a second, to put on the screen. If anybody has a screen, or we can see it over here, that here's the Beis HaMikdash, and we had on the southern, on the left side, if you look over there, there's the Mikvah, War Kohen Gadol, the Yom Kippurim, there it is. But this is the Sha'ar HaMayim, and this is on top of the gate of the water gate. It's called Sha'ar HaMayim. So there's a mikvah over there. That's where he's going to do the first tefillah. It's considered outside of the Beis HaMikdash, and the Beis HaAvtinis is over here. If you look, Lishkas Parva. So there's a mikvah on the roof over there. Over there, told us that the way to get into it was through the Lishkas. What does it say over there? Lishkas Hamadichim. He had to go through the Lishkas Hamadichim in order to get to the staircase. There's a staircase in the back, and then he went up to the roof, and there was a mikvah on the roof. So that's the Kodesh. That's called Lishkas Beis Parva, and over there was the mikvah that the Kohen Gadol would immerse 4 out of the 5 times. But the first time, he immersed himself on the gag, on the roof of the Sha'ar HaMayim, and over there that's considered B'chol. That's considered not inside the Beis HaMikdash. So that's what the Mishnah says now. You see it inside? It says all of the four out of the 5 immersions were on the roof of the Beis HaParva, which was in the Kodesh. Rashi says there's a pasuk that said we learn out over there, but Makom Kadosh. It says Brachas B'Sarov B'Mayim, but Makom Kadosh is supposed to be immersing in the holy. So the roof of the Beis HaParva was considered holy. But Chutz Mizu, but the first one, Bilvad, here it doesn't say where it was, but we had before that was on the Sha'ar HaMayim, on top of Sha'ar HaMayim. There's going to be some Gemara about it. And that was considered chol. That was not in the Beis HaMikdash. It was right on the border, but it was outside the Beis HaMikdash. The Mishnah continues, this continues the Avodah. We'll see the next Mishnah. They spread out in order that they should immerse themselves, so they spread out a linen sheet in order to make like a partition, and then he would undress and immerse himself. So we'll see that later when we continue the next Mishnah. So just back to today's study is going to be concentrating on the first one of the Mishnah. It says even a Torah person cannot go into the Zohar unless he was first immersed himself. And that's what the Gemara is going to discuss today. So the Gemara starts, beginning of the Gemara, Shalos ben Zoma. Tefillah Zulama. They asked Ben Zoma is Shimon ben Zoma. And they asked him, how come they made this tefillah? It means it's not a deraisa. It doesn't seem to be a deraisa. Where does it say such a thing? That a person,
the first one or
the first one.
The first one.
The first one, and not only the Kohen Gadol, everybody. Like it says, Ein Adam Nichnas Lazar but La Voda Afilu Torah Achit. But the whole year round, anybody goes into the Beis HaMikdash, before they go in, they have to immerse, even though he's
What's
Torah.
the question?
Why?
Why do they have to purify themselves?
Yeah. He's Torah.
Oh.
It says Afilu Torah. Look at the words. It says Afilu Torah. So he's Torah. He comes in. He says, I'm Torah. What's the problem? So he say, no. Go to the mikveh again. Why? That was the question he asked Ben Zoma. Amalahem Umam Mishana Mikodesh LeKodesh Mimakom Shanish Kores Mimakom Shanish Kores Tan Tevila Amishana Michol LeKodesh Mimakom Shanish Kores Mimakom Shanish Kores Enodin Shetan Tevila. That's all the words of Ben Zoma made a Kal V'chomer. Kal V'chomer from the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. Then we're going to learn out that in between clothes change, but whenever he changes clothing, every change of clothing from the gold to the white, from the white to the gold, from the gold to the, every time he changes, he has to go to the mikvah and also do Kiddush Yadayim Rabbanan. And there's a pasuk we're going to learn out from. It doesn't say Beferish, but it does say Beferish maybe by some of them. So over there it does say there's a pasuk over there that says he's supposed to change. He's supposed to go to the mikvah b'makom kadosh when he changes from one clothing to the other clothing. So if the Kohen Gadol, who's anyway been doing avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, and he's changing from a holy place to a holy place, it's always been a holy place. One is the Kodesh, one is the Kodesh, but he has to have an immersion just even changing from one zone to another zone, and also the whole place, even the place which is lesser Kedusha, also was Chayv Kodesh if someone would come with Ibn It's also it's holy. So if he has to do tefillah, even in that case, a Kal V'chomer, a person is coming out from outside, he's coming from the mundane, he's coming from a place which is not Chayv Kodesh, there's no issue of Tumah, so surely when he goes into the place which is holy and Chayv Kodesh, if he comes in with Tumah, surely he has to immerse himself. So that was Rav Shimon ben Zoma, and he said that there's a Kal V'chomer. A Kal V'chomer is the Araisa. A Kal V'chomer means it's Torah law, even if it's only logical, but logic is also Torah. So if the Torah says by the Kohen Gadol changing clothing, he has to immerse himself with the Araisa and Torah law. So Kal V'chomer, someone who is starting the avodah of the day, he surely has to immerse himself also. That's the first opinion. That's Ben Zoma, and according to him, is going to be the Raisa. The Gemara is going to soon say that that's the Torah law. According to Ben Zoma, that everybody comes. This first halach of the Mishnah, Ein Adam Nichlas Azara Afilu Torah Chiyitbo, is going to be the Raisa according to Ben Zoma. The Gemara continues. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Srach Tefila Hizu Kedei Shizko Tuma Yeshana Shebiyado Yifrosh. He says it's only Rabbana. It's the Srach Tuma. The word Srach usually means like dragged along. Means we're dragging along the Tefillah. I don't exactly know how to translate the word Srach Tefillah. What the Gemara wants with that. Usually Srach means dragged along, pulled along, but I don't have a good translation here. If anybody does, please help me out. But issue that he's saying is that it's in order to make him conscious about Tumah. Means he says that he's Tahor, and he says he wants to come in. But we tell him go to the mikvah. So while he's going to the mikvah, he's thinking, why am I going to the mikvah? Because of Tumah, am I Tameh? So he'll start thinking, maybe he'll remind himself that he's Tameh, even though he forgot about it. So the whole purpose is Rabbanan in order to make him more conscious if he's Tameh. We tell him go to the mikvah. He says, I'm Tahor, go to the mikvah anyway. So that'll make him think, am I Tameh? And he might remember something that he's Tameh. If he doesn't remember that he's Tameh, then this tefillah is not even going to help him. Because whenever a person's Tameh, besides having the immersion, he also has to wait until nightfall. Like it says many times, that he washes, but he goes to the mikvah, but he still has to wait until nightfall. So if he doesn't remember that he's Tameh, then it's not going to be enough to go to the mikvah now. You're going to have to go to the mikvah today and then wait until tomorrow in order to be able to do the avodah. But that's what the issue is over here, that we tell him that go to the mikvah in order that he should become more conscious if he is tamei, and if he is, then yifrosh. Like it says, if he's going to remember an old tumah that he didn't realize, the yifrosh, he'll stop doing the avodah. So that's the end of the brisa, and it comes out of machlokas between Ben Zoma and Rabbi Yehuda what the reason of the tefillah is. Is it because of the you learn that from the Kohen Gadol that he has to do it even between clothing on Yom Kippur? That must mean that Kal V'chomer, a person who is starting the avodah, he surely has to go to the mikvah, and that's every day. A person that starts doing the avodah or comes into the Zohar, Rashi says he has to immerse himself, and the Rebbe says it's only Rabbanan in order to he should become more conscious and remind himself in case he's tamei. The Gemara asks on the bottom, but Mike, in the Fili, what's going to be a ramification of this?
It's Lav Dafka Avoda, according to both Tosfos on the left there, which brings from the Yerushalmi and the Bavli. It's any time.
I said Rashi says going into the Zohar even without avoda. Some even take out the word avoda from the Mishnah. It would help. Some take out this word when it says in the beginning of the Mishnah. It says "Ein adam nichlas la azara la avoda." Some take out this word avoda. Rashi seems to have it, and he says that's lav dafka. Some don't even have the word at all. Right. Okay, the Gemara continues. But Mike and Meflugi, what is a ramification of the machlokas between Ben Zoma and Rabbi Yehuda? On the top line of Daf, what is it? Lamed Aleph. Lamed Aleph we are?
Lamed Aleph base.
Oh, we're on Lamed Aleph base. Thank you. So on the screen, I can't tell well. So Bachila Avoda Kameflugi. If it's Machala Avoda means if the Avoda that he did, if he did not immerse. What if someone came in and he didn't immerse? But he says he's Torah. But he is Torah, as far as we know, he's Torah. And he did Avoda. Is the avoda invalid? Is it the word achulim is like machalel? Machalel avoda means that it wasn't a good service. It's possible. The Ben Zoma mechel avoda. The one thing is that since it's the rice according to Ben Zoma, so even with the evid, if he did it, it's not a good avoda. Rabbi Yehuda lo mechel avoda. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's only rabbanan for achshash, maybe. So then lachatchila immerse. But if he didn't, it's kosher. but the avoda was kosher. But the Gemara says it's not true. Even according to Ben Zoma, that is the Raisa, it also is not going to be invalid because the Gemara is going to bring a Raisa that even the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, if he didn't immerse himself in between the change of clothing, it doesn't invalidate the avoda. He should. It says when there be a pasuk that says he's supposed to do it, but if he didn't post facto, it doesn't make it invalidated. If the whole source that a person has to go to the mikvah before he starts doing the avoda is learned out of a kal v'chomer from the Kohen Gadol in between the avoda, even over there it's not mechal the avoda if he did it. So you can't say that if the Kohen didn't immerse before the avoda, so it's mechal avoda. It can't be worse than, like we'd say, Dayo lebomen adin lios kenodan. When you learn out of kal v'chomer, the thing you're learning out cannot be more severe than the thing you learned out from. So if the whole source is from the Kohen Gadol Kippur, there's also not mechala. That's the more proof on the third line. But Tanya, Kohen Gadol shalom tava v'lo kiddush ben beged lebeged v'ben avoda la'avoda avodas kshera. That a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur that didn't immerse himself and he didn't do kiddush down very line in between the change of clothing, it does the service is still kosher. That's all we need for our purposes. The Gemara brings on the rest of the Bryce already, which is not our subject. That the person that says that you have to, before you start doing avodah, you have to consecrate your hands and feet. That is essential. If someone doesn't do that, so the avodah is invalidated. So what we need is the beginning of the Bryce that says that the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur between the services is not essential. If you didn't do it, it's still kosher. So how could you say possibly, according to Ben Zoma, that if someone didn't immersed before the avoda, he's going to be possible. You learn it after the Kohen Gadol, but it's also not essential. So the Gemara retracts. You're right. Ella lemeikam vasei kamiflugi. The machlokas says if it's daraisa or not. Did he transgress a positive commandment? In other words, is it daraisa or not? The Ben Zoma koi basei. The Abuda like koi basei. According to Ben Zoma, it's daraisa. So he transgressed the mitzvah to say if he did avoda without immersing before. According to Abuda, it's only drabanan. So he transgressed the drabanan. He didn't transgress the daraisa. That's the end of the sugya. The Gemara starts now. A side point, but the Gemara, at this point, the Gemara thinks it's not a side point. The Gemara thinks that there's a kasha coming up. We'll see soon. It's not a kasha. The Gemara is the kasha. The Gemara said, "A machlokas ben Zoma Abuda. Why? What's the reason of this halacha that you're supposed to immerse before you go to the Azara?" And Abuda said a reason because it's Rachtuma. You should remember if he's stomach. The Gemara says Abuda doesn't hold the whole halacha in the first place. Here it's this contradiction. Here Abuda said a reason for the halacha, and we're going to see soon he doesn't hold the halacha at all. He doesn't hold this halacha that a person has to immerse himself before he goes into the Azara. Does he hold it in at all? Does he hold it in the Mishnah? By the time you learned in a Brisa, Mitzvah Tovel v'Omed b'Shani Kanor. Abuda Omer ain't itself tvila. Shekvar Tovel mibar. Here it's talking about a Mitzvah on the 8th day. It says in the purification process, how does a Mitzvah become pure? So a Mitzvah, as long as he has the nega, as long as he has that blemish, I don't know, they call it, don't say leprosy, so I'm not going to say leprosy, but whatever it is, the nega, so as long as he has it, he can be tummy. He can be tummy for 25 years. There's nothing to do. He's out of the machna, and the pasuk says it was Ozio, the Kohen Gadol. It could be the whole life he had it. But when it finally goes away, so then there's the process how to become Torah, and first it says that he's tummy for 7 days, and then it says he comes into the machna, and then on the 7th day he goes to the mikvah. First he has the mikvah outside before he goes into the machna. And then it says he waits 7-day period inside the camp, and then he goes to the mikvah on the 7th day. That it says in the pasuk. And the 8th day he brings karbanos. But now we're talking about on the 8th day, does he have to immerse himself again when he's going to bring his korban? The whole process of his purification process in the Beis Hamikdash. Does he have to purify himself, go to the mikvah again on the 8th day? Yesterday on the 7th day he surely has to. That's the pasuk in the Torah. But on the 8th day does he have to? So here it says that the Tanna Kama says, yes, on the 8th day he has to immerse himself again. The Torah Tova, Lamed B'Shani Kino. Shani Kino is the eastern gate. We'll see a picture of it in a second. He goes in, and he stands in the gate. He doesn't go to the Beis Hamikdash yet because he didn't bring his karbanos. It's going to say that he sticks his hands, he sticks his thumbs in. Over there they have to put the blood of the korban nasham and the oil onto his thumbs, part of the purification process. But he can't go into the Beis Hamikdash yet. But it says, our focus is that it says Masorah Tova. On the 8th day, he has to immerse himself again. He doesn't have to immerse himself on the 8th day, because he already immersed yesterday on the 7th day. On the 7th day, he already immersed, he doesn't have to immerse himself again. The Gemara sees at this point that it's a contradiction. Abuda here, to Abuda what he said a page ago. A page ago, he came to explain the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that anybody that comes into the Beis Hamikdash, even if he's Tahor, he has to immerse himself. And here Abuda says that the Mitzvah, the 8th day, doesn't have to immerse himself. And Abuda over there agreed with the Mishnah, and here he seems to disagree. That's a contradiction in Abuda. The Gemara says that's not a kasha. Here goes the answer. Ahu Kiditani Timer. Shekvar Togli Bar. Over there, Abud explained himself because he immersed himself yesterday. If he says I'm Torah, but it was already a long time ago, so then we Choshesh, and Abud says, this way, go to the mikvah again, and I'll start thinking, am I tummy? They want me to tell them, am I tummy? Maybe he'll remember that he was tummy, he didn't realize it. But if he went to the mikvah just yesterday and he's conscious that he's going to go right away the 8th day, so there's no chash that he forgot about Tumah. So what's the contradiction? Rabbi says over here, this particular case, that the Matzorah went to the mikvah on the 7th day, he doesn't have to go again on the 8th day. But a regular person that comes in, even if he says he's Torah, he does have to immerse. So there's no kasha. So the Gemara is very happy with the terrorist. The terrorist is a good terrorist, no contradiction. And the Gemara is so surprised, says, what was the kasha in the first place? Like, what did you think? With the the person who, the word Kori sounds like he called out, one who called out the question, like, what do you think? What is your question in the first place? It's obvious what the answer is. The Gemara says you're right. We're just bringing this in because there's another kasha to ask. He really meant to ask a different kasha. He wasn't asking the contradiction between Rabbi Yehuda and Amar Aleph that said the reason is of the Mishnah that he asked them, anybody who's tahor has to still immerse when he comes into the Beis HaMikdash. That's fine. And here he said that a Matzorah on the 8th day does not have to. That wouldn't be a contradiction. There's not a contradiction that he had in mind. What's the contradiction? The following Brisa. It says in the Brisa, now we're going to ask a contradiction about a Matzorah himself. Till now, we had a regular person who doesn't have to go to the mikvah because he might have forgotten that he's tummy. So this way, he'll remind himself. A Matzorah that went yesterday, the Yehuda says he doesn't have to. Tanakama says he does, the Yehuda says he doesn't have to. Now, the Gemara is going to ask a kasha, a contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda. Lishkas HaMatzorah. So let's get the picture on again. We saw this a couple of pages ago, but just to, if you look at the Beis HaMikdash, so that's the eastern gate over there, Shan Nikanor. That's the eastern gate where we said a second ago that's where the Matzorah goes to stick his hands in. That's the eastern gate, Shan Nikanor. But we have here the Ezras Nashim. We have the outer courtyard. It's called the Ezras Nashim, and over there it says that there are 4 smaller chambers on the 4 corners, and we discussed what they are. And the top right, which is the northwest, over there says Lishkas HaMatzorah. And you see the mikvah over there. And why is it called Lishkas HaMatzorah? Because the Matzorah would immerse before, on the 8th day, before he would go to Shan Nikanor to have the purification process. So that's what the Brisa is going to talk now about this Lishka that is called Lishkas HaMatzorah now. So the Brisa says, Lishkas HaMatzorah. Why is it called Lishkas HaMatzorah? The northwestern chamber of the Ezras Nashim. Why is it called so? Shesham Matzorah Tovlim, because that's when the Matzorah will Tovlim before it go into the on the 8th day. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Lo Matzorah Bulva Adam or Ela Kol Adam. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda again, here's Rabbi Yehuda, and he says not only Matzorah, anybody that comes into the Beis HaMikdash, he has to be Tovlim. So what's the Gemara's problem? That he says the word Bulvad. This word Bulvad, that catches our attention because Bulvad means there's not only Matzorah, anybody. If he says not only Matzorah, Tanakama says only Matzorah. The Rebbe says not only Matzorah, everybody. But that means he agrees also that a Matzorah also has to go to the mikvah on the 8th day. And the Brisa before said, the Rebbe says that ain't a Tzarech Tvila, that the Shekvar Tavla Mebe'erev. The fact that he went to the mikvah yesterday, Rebbe says the Matzorah doesn't have to. So that's the contradiction. Here before Rebbe said that the Matzorah doesn't have to go to the mikvah when he comes in on the 8th day because he went yesterday, the 7th day, and he's been conscious the whole time. And here he says he seems to agree that the Matzorah does have to go to the mikvah on the 8th day. He just says that other people also use that mikvah. It wasn't exclusively for the Matzorah, it was for other people also. But he also does agree that the Matzorah has to go to the mikvah on the 8th day. That's the contradiction. So the Gemara is going to have a couple of answers. The Gemara says, first the Gemara is going to try some answers, not going to work, but eventually we'll have a couple of answers. First the Gemara tries lo kasha. How to tavel lo tavel. The case, you're right, the regular case that he goes to the mikvah on the 7th day, then the Buddha says he doesn't have to go on the 8th day. He went yesterday, he doesn't have to go again. But in the case where he missed the tefillah, he missed the immersion of the 7th day, then the Buddha says, okay, he didn't do it the 7th day, do it the 8th day. That's what the Gemara tries. But the Gemara says that can't be. If he missed the 7th day, then it's not good enough to go to the 8th day. He has to wait until he has nightfall again and come back tomorrow. We'll tell him, go to the mikvah now, fine, but come back tomorrow. You can't continue today. Either lo tavel, have shemesh boy. If he didn't immerse himself on the 7th day, he has to wait till nightfall and come back tomorrow. So that can't be true. Ella idividi the tavel. You're right. Both cases was he went to the mikvah on the 7th day. So what's the answer to the contradiction if he has to immerse himself on the 8th day? Did he take his mind? Did he remove his mind from being consciousness that he's in a state of purity? So if he went to the mikvah on the 7th day and he's the whole time conscious that I have to stay Torah, so then he doesn't have to go to the mikvah because he's still Torah. But if he forgot, whatever, he went on a trip, I don't know what he did, he forgot what he's doing, so then he forgot that he's not conscious that he's Torah, he might have become Tama, and then Abida will say, you do have to go to the mikvah again on the 8th day. But the Gemara rejects that also. If he forgot about if he was not conscious about his state of Tara, then who knows what he did? Maybe he came in contact with the dead, and he was an old amaze. Maybe he came in the same roof as a corpse, and then he has to not only go to the mikveh, you have to wait 7 days. You have to have also sprinkling from the paraduma. It's the 3rd and 7th day. The whole purification process of somebody who came in contact with the dead. Because the Yochanan was quoted saying, if somebody forgot, he got unconscious. He lost his consciousness. Not unconscious, but he became, what's the word to say? That he was not absent-minded, and he was not conscious that he's supposed to be in a state of Tara. Then Mechoshesh, he came in contact with the dead, and he'd have to have the sprinkling of the Ephah Paraduma on the 3rd and 7th day. So we still didn't succeed in reconciling. When does Rabbi Yehuda say the Mitzvah goes to the mikvah on the 8th day? When does he not have to? Now the Gemara is getting to the real answers. And the you're right. Both cases talk about that he did not get absent-minded. He didn't lose his mind. He has to have been known at the time that he went to the mikvah on the 7th day. He had to know that tomorrow I'm going to go to the Beis Hamikdash. It only counts if he intended that this immersion is going to be also for the purpose of going to the Beis Hamikdash. So if he knew that's the process, that he goes to the mikvah on the 7th day, then the 8th day he goes to the Beis Hamikdash. So then he knew that he immersed on the 7th day for the purpose of going in. Then Abida says he doesn't have to immerse himself again. But let's say he didn't know. It's true, he wasn't Mesiach Das, but he didn't know. The case would be that one who's directing him what to do, he just tells him play by play what you have to do now, what you have to do tomorrow. So he didn't know he's going to go to the Beis Hamikdash tomorrow. So then, since the tefillah of the 7th day was not intending to immerse himself, to go into the Beis Hamikdash on the 8th day, he does need another immersion. So that would be the way to reconcile Rabbi Yehuda, that if he knew when he immersed on the 7th day that he's going to go to the Beis Hamikdash on the 8th day, then he doesn't have to immerse on the 8th day. And if he did not know, then and he didn't do it with that intention, then he would have to immerse himself again on the 8th day. That's answer number 1. Answer number 2, Iboy, same if you want, like I said, another terrorist. The whole problem was because it said the word bulvad. Here we have the word bulvad over there, first one on the line, about 10 lines up. The whole problem was the Bida said not only Mitzaron, everybody. The word only, that threw us off. That if you say not only Mitzaron, that means that you do agree with Mitzaron, because other people also. And that was the contradiction, because Abida said that the Mitzaron does not need on the 8th day. So that word was what was threw us off. So he says, okay, so edit the word, take out the word. Instead of reading it, Lo Mitzaron Bulvad Amru, say Lo Mitzaron, take out the word Bulvad. Right here, between these two words, take out the word Lo Mitzaron Amru. Don't say Lo Mitzaron Bulvad Amru. And everybody's saying, no, not Mitzvah. You say the reason why it's called Lishkas Mitzvah is because the Mitzvah used to immerse over there. No, the Mitzvah did not immerse over there. Ella Kaladim, everybody else immersed over there. The Mitzvah does not need because, as Abida said, he immersed already yesterday. That was the second terrace. A third terrace, Rabbi Yehuda, it's just saying that even according to you, it should not only be the Mitzvah. I hold the Mitzvah does not need. You say it's called Lishkas Mitzvah because the Mitzvah immerses. I say the Mitzvah does not need at all. Even according to you, that says the Mitzvah does need, you should agree that not only the Mitzvah. So he's only talking in the language of his opponents. He's talking according to their understanding. According to me, a Mitzvah does not need at all. You say it's called Lishkas Mitzvah because of the Mitzvah. I say the Mitzvah doesn't need at all. Even according to you, that say the Mitzvah does need, easy mihas the low Mitzvah bulvadam u'ela kol adam. You should at least agree to me. The word easy, they say means, how to shorten the word easy? If so, in Kenu. If you should at least, if so, what?
Like Izah.
They say it's Aramaic. They say like in Kene fo. The word efo and also in Hebrew is a very difficult word. We say in Kain zosasu, in Kain fo zosasu. It's kind of an emphasis that doesn't have an exact translation in English. But the idea is that at least you should agree to me that not only Mitzorah, Ela Kol Adam, means Abida says, I hold not Mitzorah, only other people. But even you hold that is Mitzorah, so you should also agree not only Mitzorah. So he answered the contradiction. Abida himself holds that you don't, the Mitzorah doesn't have to because he immersed yesterday. He's talking to them, even Lishitasam, they should also agree that other people also use the mikvah, not only in Mitzorah. And the Gemara says, if it ends off, Rabbanan, Mitzorah, Daishi Tuma, Kaladam, or Daishi Tuma. We're going to stop here. This needs a little bit more explanation, but the word Daishi means that he's used to Tuma. It seems to say here that according to Rabbanan, only the Mitzorah has to immerse himself because he's been used to being Tameh. It means he, B'choshesh more that he's Tameh, the fact that he has been a Mitzvah the whole time, as long as he's been a Mitzvah, so he wasn't conscious of washing himself out, washing out for Tumah, because he's anyway Tumah. So that's why there's a chash that he's Tumah, and therefore he wasn't conscious of it, and therefore go to the mikvah. But a regular person, on the contrary, that he's thinks that he's Torah, so he's more conscious if he became Tumah. The pashas in these words would sound like they argue in the Mishnah. This Rabbanan who say that the Lishkas HaMitzvah is only called for the Masorah, and other people do not need to immerse before they go into the Beis HaMikdash. It sounds like they argue on the whole halacha, that the Mishnah Bayah said that everybody who goes into the Beis HaMikdash, even Torah, has to immerse. This Rabbanan seems to argue on that. But this one line, I'll hope to come back tomorrow to get a little bit more clarity. So we'll stop more or less around here and start again tomorrow. Just to review, just to sum up today's Gemara. The Gemara spoke about the regular people the whole year round. The Kohen, if somebody urinates in the middle of the day, even though he went to the mikveh already, he'll have to do Kiddush Nine V'Raglayim again in order to get off the urine off of his hands and feet. Feet because he might have dripped, and his hands because he might have cleaned his feet as you're supposed to. A person who gets urine on his legs and his feet is supposed to make sure that it gets clean, and other people shouldn't make rooms about it that his children are not his. After I went into a side point about Sol Ben Koma, and we came out that if there's a tzoa, excrement, or some kind of filth that's on his body, besides the Piyat Abbas, so then Machlokes, if it's covered, is it good enough? Rav Chisda says no, if he has excrement on his arm, even though it's covered with a shirt, he'll have to clean it in order to say Kriyashma. It can't be on his body, like Kolos Masa Tamrana. And Rav Huna says that he may, since it's covered, and there's Machlokes Ui Pascha like, even in the Psak, there's Machlokes Ui Pascha like, and if it's Bimkoma, which means that it's in the place where it came out, which is more disgusting, so then everybody holds that it has to be, it's not enough to be covered by his clothing, and it's in a place which is revealed, means it's external, so then everybody holds that you're not allowed to say Kriya Shema or learn brachos, everything. And the Gemara said that even if he's in a standing position where it is covered up by his body, but if he would be in a sitting position, it would have been revealed. That's also called external. Then it had Hilchas, what do we say, Hilchas Musar, like the ethical hygiene that a person should do during the Suda. So if he went out to urinate in a way that he got his hands dirty and is only coming back to drink, and some people are not so much to wash their hands, he should even make it conspicuous that everybody should see that he's washing in order they shouldn't think that he didn't. If a person is specifically known that he surely would not, he's finicky and he wouldn't have come in with dirty hands, so that you don't have to do it in front of everybody. If it's a thing that everybody knows that everybody's going to wash, if he's eating, also about Netflix, so then it could be that you don't wash in front of everybody. Depends on the culture. We said according to today's culture, probably there's no chash. Everybody washes their hands when they come out of the bathroom. The next halacha was that anybody comes into the Zara, even if he's Torah, he has to immerse before going into the Beis HaMikdash. We said even not for avodah, just going into the Zara. Rabbanan, that this way it's going to remind him, make himself more conscious if he's Tameh. If he remembers that he's Tameh, he's going to have to leave the Beis HaMikdash today, not come in, and come tomorrow after he has Erev Shemesh. The Gemara pointed out a machlokes. If a mitzvah on the 8th day he has to immerse himself or not. Tanakama says yes, Rabbi Yehuda says not. There was sort of a contradiction. Rabbi Yehuda, if he sometimes says that a mitzvah does need on the 8th day, the Gemara came out that he didn't mean to say that. Either he didn't say it or he didn't mean to say it. So we're talking according to Rabbanan. Or one point was that if he did not know at the time that he immersed on the 7th, he didn't know that he's going to go to the Beis HaMikdash, then he would have to immerse again on the 8th day. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to. The Gemara does point out that if he's Mesiach Das, if he became absent-minded, he forgot that he's in a state of Tara, then he would have to even wait 7 days, which maybe came in contact with the mace. And the rest of the Mishnah spoke about, well, we'll see later on, that in the course of the day, the Kohen Gadol had to immerse himself 5 times, and Kiddush Nabak 10 times, and all of those tefillos were done in the Kodesh on the roof of the Beis HaParva, except for the first one, which is the Chol, and that was on the top of the Shammai. Okay, yes, go ahead, everybody. And we'll be coming back in 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, go ahead, everybody. Thank you. Have a good day. And those who are coming back, I'll see you in 5 minutes.
I think the rabbi might want to turn off the recording now.